After Kevin Durant got traded, the Cavaliers were mentioned as a wild card suitor for him. Does that mean a big shakeup is coming for the Cavs? Plus, we react to the NBA Finals. Spencer Davies, Spencer German with you on the latest episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI. Welcome into another episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI. I, of course, am Spencer German. Spencer Davies, my partner in crime, is back. He's rejuvenated. He had a nice vacation. Although maybe rejuvenated is the wrong word because you did say you're still kind of catching up on some stuff and getting yourself sort of put back together. But that's after that always happens after vacations. You just have no motivation. You're still sort of on a different timeline. So I get how it goes, man. But it's good to have you back, and I'm glad you got a chance to kind of get away for a little bit.
Most definitely, Spence. And we were listening to you on the drive back from Ocean City, coming back to Cleveland. It was good to hear from you and hear from Daryl on 92.3. That was really cool. But honestly, man, good to just kind of refresh, take a step back, get some sun, go in the ocean, hang out with family. It was cool. It was cool, man. And, got my swings into a couple golf courses down there. It was fun. I was actually a little concerned that I forgot how to talk. So we'll see how this goes. It's been a little while, so... but I did obviously watch the finals while we were on vacation, and obviously last night to see how things wrapped up. And congrats to the Thunder, man. And devastated for the Pacers the way that it ended for them, but they should be very proud of how they played this postseason, and the run is going to be memorable forever and for years to come. So here we go again, brand new slate, and we'll see what happens from here on out.
I will say this. Usually talking isn't an issue for either of us. So hopefully if you're a little rusty, it's okay. I know you'll get back into the swing of things eventually. But I am excited to be back together. I know we sort of took the opportunity when you were on vacation to just kind of take a week off. And I think deservedly so. We've been grinding for a while, following the Cavs. But you're right. The finals kind of played out while you were gone and then finished up last night after you were back. And listen, there's a lot of tentacles, I think, that branch off from the outcome of this game. Some of the unfortunate circumstances that played out. I know what people obviously understand what we're referring to, the Haliburton injury, what it means for next year. And those are all things that we want to get into. But I do think the first place to start in relation to the finals is just like what we thought of this series overall, because there was so much said, Spence, going in that like people weren't going to care and it was two small market teams. And I know I griped about how I don't get how NBA, like casual NBA fans on one side can say, well, I don't like the NBA. This was like 10 years ago because the same teams and the same stars are always the ones in it. And then you get a league with the second apron and all this new stuff they've implemented. That's so the parity is endless. All these teams have a chance now. Small markets have a chance. Big markets have a chance. And you get two teams in small markets together. And they're, by the way, they give you a really good series. I mean, aside from like there was the blowout in Game 6. And the blowout in Game 2 that the Thunder obviously won after the Pacers won Game 1. But, like, around that, like, it was a competitive series. You could tell these two teams are pretty evenly matched. If Haliburton doesn't get hurt last night, I have to wonder if that series goes down to that game goes down to the wire the way some of the other games did. And so I'm left feeling like it was a pretty satisfying series overall that had a very unfortunate end in the way that we didn't get to see them sort of compete at a high level to the very end because one team lost its best player. But obviously the Thunder were the best team all year, deserving of their championship. And there's no asterisks for me, but I think in general, these two teams put on a really good show that ended with a pretty, deserving champion when it was all said and done.
They did. And I feel like I'm not going to go the negative route here. I think for the Thunder, yes, they obviously had a little bit of fortune break their way, unfortunately, for Indiana. In that first, 7 minutes when Haliburton comes out, he's knocked down 3 threes, and then all of a sudden his Achilles pops. Hate to see it for him. It's awful to watch a competitor fall that way, and we're going to get into it, but obviously the Achilles monster coming for everybody in the Eastern Conference, it appears. But for the Thunder to rebuild the way they did in a very small amount of time, if you really think about it, it's like a 5-year window to where they allowed their talent to kind of mature throughout the years, hit a roadblock last year when they lost in their opportunity to get to the next level, and to come back this year and to do what they did the way that they did it, and add a piece like Alex Caruso, add a piece like Isaiah Hartenstein to complement the talent they already had in-house, you see the result. And I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you look at his numbers last night, it doesn't look like the prettiest performance. It's not the most efficient thing, but in the playoffs, guess what? Doesn't matter. He, as I saw somebody put it on Twitter, emptied the clip. I think he went like 8 of 25 from the field, but he also was outstanding as a passer, and that was something that he was very, very questioned about for his ability to distribute, because sometimes it would get a little bit bogged down and ISO heavy, but he found a way last night, did a great job, and it's a team game, man, and that's ultimately what I think these finals showed, and that includes the Pacers too, man. Like, you got a bunch of guys scoring in double figures, and it was just beautiful basketball to watch. The way that they passed the ball, the way that they moved the ball. Indiana did that the entire way in the playoffs, and credit to their entire team. You know, you got the likes of like Obi Toppin, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, TJ McConnell going on his 12-0 run in the third quarter last night. Those are things that can't go unnoticed, and we've spoken about it ad nauseum on the pod, but like the days of the big threes are over, man. Like, you gotta be able to have deep teams, well-conditioned teams, and also ones that can defend with high ball pressure. And that's what you saw from these two teams last night, especially in that first half. I thought it was such a well-fought first 24 minutes defensively. And then OKC turned that up even more in the third quarter with their ball pressure and their piranha-like abilities to get in each other's faces and to play the passing lanes and to basically see the actions before they happen and get their hands on deflections and all that stuff. So very, very deserving couple of teams that got there, and I think it could have gone either way, but you got to tip your cap to OKC, and they're very well positioned now too. So thanks to Sam Presti, they seemingly have this figured out. I don't know if dynasty is the word, because I don't want to go there. You always hear that saying, like, they'll be back to the losing team, and then you always say, oh, they'll be back for the winning team. And as we've seen in the NBA, nothing's promised.
Well, I mean, we were all saying the exact same thing about the Celtics last year, right? Like, oh, yeah, the Celtics, like, this is the start of a dynasty for them. They're too good. They're going to keep this thing together. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of questions about them with the Tatum injury, and can they keep this whole group together? So we'll get into that here in a second. But, yeah, what I will say about this matchup in particular, too, from somebody who had no rooting interest for either in either of these teams, obviously, I went into this finals feeling like I was going to be happy with either team winning, or happy for that fan base no matter what, because I love when small markets get their opportunity. I think Cleveland sort of started this trend, right, in 2016 when they won it, where some of these obscure markets, if you will, have had a chance to win one. Toronto followed it up with the one against Golden State. You get the Bucks when he won. You had the Nuggets when he won. Like, it's been kind of this nice trend of teams that aren't just the biggest markets competing on the biggest stage for a title. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. So I was happy to see, like, okay, two underrated markets that don't get a lot of love competing in this one. I think that Haliburton was so fun this entire playoffs, even at the expense of Cleveland when we were at those games and he just ripped the heart of the arena out when he hits that game winner in game 2. Like, he became such a polarizing story and such a fun NBA storyline in general. Like, he went from being like a star to being like a star just off this playoff run alone. And it was a remarkable thing to follow along with as an NBA fan. And so I think it was hard not to get swept up in that and feel good for the Pacers if they had come away with victorious. And I honestly thought, even without him last night, they kept putting up a fight, and I thought it was going to transition to the second half. Like, I thought they'd keep it as close as closer than they did, just because that's been their MO all postseason. And it was unfortunate that it kind of got away from them, but I guess to be expected when you're playing a juggernaut team like the Thunder. And then for the Thunder, I to your point on like the rebuild, I was happy for them, and I'm happy they did eventually get over that hump and win it, because, man, like you said, they went from this big three of their own where they were sort of like the up-and-coming upstart team with this young core, and then KD spurns them, and in a lot of people's eyes took the easy way out to go join the Warriors. His team almost beat them in a series that previous year, and they lose him. They keep Westbrook as long as they can, but that doesn't really amount to much. And then they have to kind of go through a rebuild, and they accumulate all these picks along the way, and they built their team the right way. And so for them to quickly kind of get back on the horse here and then get back to the NBA Finals and then win one and, show that they are one of the best run organizations in the NBA and probably in all of sports, I thought was just awesome for them. So I think it was a cool thing to see them emerge from that previous Big Three era that ended in a way they probably didn't want it to, with KD especially leaving, to then so quickly be back in the conversation. I thought was pretty sweet.
Yeah, you took it back a little bit further than I was thinking too. I was feeling like, they're in the bubble. You have Chris Paul on the team, and they had success, but they still weren't quite there. And then you get to 2021, and that's when the years that go by, they get a lot of good young talent, but clearly just so raw and undeveloped at that point. But you see the maturation. You see how much better they got throughout the years. Lou Dort, same thing.
He's phenomenal.
Exactly. He's a big part of that. And then, you add J-Dub the last couple of years. And then look at Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren obviously didn't play his rookie year, and then he comes back and, shows some signs. And then even when you look at his first playoff run, it wasn't particularly that great offensively. The stuff that we saw from him in the regular season, it wasn't as consistent. However, at his most criticized in the finals, and Miles Turner did a hell of a job on him. Like, he was making him work, and it looked like Chet wasn't quite strong enough physically, our favorite word, in the finals. But look at the impact that guy made defensively yesterday.
Oh my God. What do you have, like 4 blocks, I think, last night?
All over the place.
Yeah.
All over the place. The rule of verticality was working perfectly, playing so disciplined. That's the story. I think that's the big part of this is the development, the experience, and having to fight through a lot of things. And that's natural with sports. And I feel like you can apply that to any team that's on the cusp, so to speak. So I think that that's also a good, not blueprint, because you don't want to model your team exactly off of every other team's, but like it's a good kind of team to look at or look after and see like that worked. That worked. Getting 2 guys who aren't necessarily stars, but adding more depth and adding more pieces to what the Thunder had already built, that's probably a good idea. So I think that's going to really play a factor in how these teams start to build, even though we've seen this past week the trades that have been made, not just the KD one, but even the Desmond Bane one.
For sure.
These guys are pushing the chips in really, really fast.
The real quick on Chet, because I was going to say, as we talk about Evan Mobley continuing to develop, he feels like he's in that same phase that Evan was in a couple years ago, where it was like, all right, Evan defensively is a superb player. How's he step his game up defensive or offensively? And so I think this playoff run probably helped him see like there's some shortcomings there, and it's only going to make him better. Like if we talk about Evan Mobley developing, Chet's only going to get better as well. And that's probably a big thing, obviously, that the Thunder can bank on as they continue to, or they hope to build a dynasty, like we said, but we'll see if that actually happens. Now, we have to get to the Haliburton injury and what that means, because listen, man, like, and we'll get, I think there's a bigger picture part of this too, where it was not just Haliburton. It was Jason Tatum. It was Damian Lillard, as you obviously mentioned, all 3 of those guys going down this postseason with ruptured Achilles. And that's going to have a ripple effect into next season, especially in this Eastern Conference, how things kind of play out from here. And honestly, like the Dame one, that could still potentially lead to Giannis leaving. We don't know for sure. It sounds like the Bucks are trying to convince him, hey, stick around. We're going to try to continue to build around you. But something, things could change. It's the NBA. Things change quickly. So we'll see what that means for the offseason. But I think the Haliburton one in particular is fascinating because he is going to miss most of next season. And I know an Achilles doesn't keep you out for a full year anymore. But even when he's back, there's no guarantee that he's like the same player. So on one hand, like at least immediately. So on one hand, it's like the Pacers could just get themselves in the playoffs and then have Haliburton coming back in time for the postseason and still be a threat. On the other hand, it's like, will he be enough of a threat to you really impact a potential postseason run next year? We'll see. But like this I think leaves this Eastern Conference, all 3 of these injuries, Tatum, Haliburton, and Dame, leaves this Eastern Conference even more wide open than we had talked about it being, just based off of how things could change this offseason with trades and whatnot. Like with those 3 teams, I'm kind of trying to have to figure out how to navigate not having one of their top players. like the door is open for somebody else to seize this opportunity and try to go win it. The Cavs are one of those teams. The Knicks are one of those teams. The Magic, who traded for Desmond Bane, like you mentioned, they are one of those teams. And ironically, those are the three teams, according to FanDuel, with the best odds out of the Eastern Conference to win a championship next year. The Cavs are number 2 at plus 800 behind the Thunder. The Knicks are tied for third with Orlando. With the Rockets, I should say. I think they're like plus 1,200. I think I had it as, and then plus 1,300. Those two are plus 900. Then at plus 1,300 is Orlando and Boston, tied for that sort of the fifth spot, if you will, in terms of the best odds to win the championship next year. So, like, even Vegas is reflecting the fact that these injuries are going to impact hierarchy in the Eastern Conference. And so this presents an interesting scenario, Spence, where it's like, if you're the Cavs and Kobe Altman, and I know we've talked a little bit about this already, how they believe development is a big part of them taking that next step. And also, I think health was obviously a major factor in this team's failures in the postseason. But how much can you, like, do you just look at this Eastern Conference with all these injuries now and say, well, hey, let's just let's just run it back and hope that we stay healthy this time around. And if we do, we can navigate this Eastern Conference? Or does it maybe motivate you to make a deal now because you realize, like, man, this thing is wide open and we have a real opportunity in front of us to try to grab a title here, while some of these other teams are still sort of figuring out some roster decisions, but also these major injuries that are going to impact how they perform next year.
Well, first off, heartbreaks for all three of those guys with an Achilles injury.
I should have prefaced all this by saying, like, the Haliburton injury was devastating. Like, watching that live, I felt so bad. Like, the shot of his dad crying, like him on the floor, banging the floor, and it sucks because, like, he knew the risks, obviously. And that's the thing. Like, these people who are, like, ripping the Pacers, like, I forget who it was. Somebody tweeted about, like, player safety needs to be a bigger priority, and it was like, guys, like, he talked about openly that he went over all these things with his the medical team. Like, they advised him, and it was reported that, like, if this was the regular season, he wouldn't be playing. He would have been out several weeks. But it's the NBA Finals, and he wanted to play. So it was his decision, and I don't blame him for it. It just sucks that it had to end that way because nobody wanted to see him go down with that injury in such a devastating, like, heartbreaking way. It was awful. It was really awful.
It really was. And you hate to see that happen in a Game 7. But, conversely, you still don't want to see that happen to a guy like Jason Tatum and where they were doing in the playoffs. And then, obviously Damian Lillard having – it all had to do with all these calf injuries too. So I don't know. I'm not no doctor or anything like that, but just the calf strains, maybe we're going to be a little bit more careful with those. And, everyone complains about the load management and stuff like that, but there's got to be a way to navigate those because – I feel like if you're putting more pressure on that spot, there's more of a chance. And that Donovan Mitchell was dealing with a calf injury too in the playoffs. Yeah. So if you think about that in hindsight, it's like, wow, he was playing through that. Might want to take it a little bit more cautiously. But in terms of Cavs and the Eastern Conference, I still don't think you could completely count out these teams that were in the playoffs because at the end of the day, the culture that they've built has been sustainable. Sure. The Bostons and now obviously Indiana. I don't know if you're going to get this type of offensive shooting nights that you get from Indiana like they had in the playoffs this year, which was just insane. But they have a culture that they've established there, and that's where the Cavs think they're getting to, and I feel like they are getting to. So I don't know how much you want to shake it up. You are obviously going to be listening to conversations, and we'll get to all of the buzz and all that stuff. But it's interesting to me that Vegas thinks so highly of the Cavs. A lot of the national media thinks so highly of the Cavs. And it just seems like locally there's this hunger to fix, change. And while you have to do something, doesn't mean you have to do something that completely alters the calculus. So for me, again, it goes back to that Caruso or Hartenstein level player. Those are the things, the Obi Toppin level player. Those are the types of moves I think the Cavs have to look at more than completely flipping a core around and keeping two guys. Maybe one of the core four members ends up going somewhere else. And we've talked very much about Jared Allen being a possibility doing that. I don't think Darius Garland goes anywhere. I really don't, especially now you have the surgery that he had, and he's probably going to be, 10 games, whatever it is, missing the first part of the season. I don't think that would turn teams off, but
yeah,
you know what I mean as far as like the Cavs actually trying to shop around. Like they'll listen. They'll listen for those two. I don't think they'll listen on Donovan and Evan, but it's the marginal stuff that's important. And it's the margins where you need to be better in the playoffs. And I don't think that really indicates that they're looking to completely do a 180. Like they've got it. I feel like they do have a really good shot at being a finals team. I just think that they have run into some misfortune, but also we're not prepared for the next stages. And that's something you do have to learn on the way up.
Well, and that's where like changing something, I think we both talked about this, Spence. We both feel like something needs to change with this team. We've sort of highlighted Jared Allen as the move. Like part of that is the mentality that you sort of develop by being a playoff team. And you mentioned like the Carusos, the Obi Toppins, those types of players. Like those guys have that mentality about them. So those are the types of guys you're looking for. However, you can sort of bring them into this roster and sort of supplement some things. And that's the key that I think we're all waiting to see what the Cavs have up their sleeve. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the rumors that were already out there here in a second, but I will say this, like, I think that I'm not going to sit here and say like Kobe was watching the game last night and all of a sudden Haliburton gets hurt and he's like, you know what? Now we're not doing anything. Like, we're just going to stand pat. Like, but I do think like given how this East is going to set up with these injuries, I do think it makes somebody like Kobe Altman probably less inclined to make a move, because I do think and try to just kind of keep most of this group together. Now, I'm not saying they won't make any moves. Like like Isaac Okoro, I think is somebody that they probably will look to shop. It sounds like Dean Wade is somebody they're going to look to shop. So there will be some ancillary things. But in terms of like keeping the core four together, especially maybe trying to bring back at least one of Ty Jerome or Sam Merrill, like I think you will see a lot of the same pieces and parts, because I think they're going to look and say, hey, health was a big factor for us. If we can stay healthy, why can't we be the Pacers of next year? And they see that there's this opening here to do something like that, and they think that they can go on a special run of their own, if that's the case. But I do think like when you look at this Eastern Conference and these injuries, how they change the landscape of how things could look, and that you're going to be missing some key players on on notable teams for for several months out of next season, if not most of the season. I think it should be an opportunity to look and say, you know what? Let's push those chips even further into the center of the table. I know they did that when they acquired Donovan Mitchell already, but you got to go for it. And I think the Magic are honestly, Spence, like one of the biggest reasons why I think that reigns more true. Because the Magic, even before the Haliburton injury, they looked and they said, hey, we know what we need this offseason. We need more scoring. We win a lot of games that are rock fights. We need to be able to sort of dictate the terms and get a scoring threat. And they went and got Desmond Bane. So it's not only about like, yeah, you can hang your hat a little bit on, hey, we were great last year. Why can't we be great again next year in an Eastern Conference that's going to be even more wide open now because of these injuries and things? But like when it's also about like what the teams around you are also going to do to try to push those chips into the center of the table. And that's basically what the Magic did. That was a move to kind of go for it. The Knicks might have a move up their sleeve where they're like, hey, we came up short this year. We're going to try to make another to really go for it, understanding where we are in the Eastern Conference and where things sort of reside with some of these injuries and the situations these other teams are dealing with. And frankly, they've been linked to Giannis. There's been a lot of talk about them trying to maybe deal Cat after they just acquired him last offseason. So who knows what they're going to try to do. And they do have, as I mentioned with FanDuel, they're tied for the third best odds to win the championship next year. So, like, on one hand, I think the Cavs probably try to, and I think this is just kind of Kobe Altman's way of doing things. Like, I think he generally likes to be maybe more conservative in the way that he does things. And so I could see him sort of banking on, well, hey, we can be in that same position as the Pacers next year because of the nature of the Eastern Conference and how things are going to set up. But I hope to God that he ends up using it more as an opportunity to make this team better and really go for it, because again, it's wide open, and the Cavs are already in a position where they can compete for one. I still believe that, even though they came up short this year to a Pacers team that was really, really good, and I think proved that with this postseason run. But man, like if you can put yourself over the top with a move that brings in, like you said, some of those players that a team like the Thunder has or a team like the Pacers have, like that would be fans would be ecstatic about next season. And suddenly I think it would change. It would make the regular season, because if you run it back, nobody's going to care. And nobody's going to care about the regular season largely anyway. But if you change some things up, like you at least inject some life into a regular season where it's like, okay, let's see what this new iteration of the Cavs have before they get to that time of year in the playoffs where we know it's going to matter the most. So I don't know, man. Like I think it's an opportunity to push the chips into the center of the table, but we'll see what Kobe Altman's sort of philosophy is on it. And I think we did get a little indication as to what he's thinking, at least this weekend, with some of the rumors that are out there.
Yes. I will also say this. Those teams that you mentioned that are kind of behind the Cavs in the odds rankings, you got to also think about the aprons. Cavs are going to be a little bit handicapped by this now. So you're going to have to find a way to get creative. You're going to have to be a trade facilitator. If you want to have, multiple player deals or whatever. You're going to have to find a way to make these trades and stay under it. It's not an easy job. I do not envy that front office.
No.
However, there shouldn't be a worry. And when you go back and listen to Kobe Altman's end of season press conference, he's like, look, like we would be like a little bit more concerned if we weren't happy with our core. But you can have this kind of tax bill and this apron if you're satisfied with who your core is and who your main cast is. And they are. And I think it's also sustainable, those guys. So it's, again, all of this is about what's on the margins. It's your 7th and 8th guys. Like, those are the ones that you have to figure out. And I think watching the postseason and watching the finals in particular with the Pacers and with the Thunder, that you can see that. You can see that. And yes, I mean, obviously the Thunder had an MVP and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he's an all-time. He's all-time. He's officially stamped now in my book. And but you look on the other side, and the Pacers, they just fought, man. Like Pascal Siakam played like a number one option in the playoffs, and that's somebody who really wasn't very highly thought of, I guess, from a general and how do I say this, casual perspective. But that guy went out there and played his heart out in the playoffs. And then you have the supporting cast, as I mentioned, the Neesmiths, the Nemhards, the Toppins of the world. Those are the ones that are going to get you to that next echelon. And obviously it's a mentality thing and it's an experience thing too. But in terms of the talent, I feel like the Cavs they're right there. They went out and did it in the regular season. They won in Miami by combined 90 points in the first round. I don't care how bad you think Miami is. It's still a playoff environment, and they went into Miami and took their throats. So they're obviously very capable of it. They have to do it. They have to sustain it. And like Donovan said, make sure that you don't go on these droughts offensively. Make sure that you're doing the little things down the stretch. Those aren't really changeable or fixable with a big move. That is all up here, and that's all experience. That's all having to go through it. So I'm staying consistent with my message on that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of stuff that the difference between, not boxing out and not getting a rebound per se, like, that's the difference in a couple of those games in that Indiana series. It's true, and that's what it comes down to. Closing out games and figuring it out and making sure not to go on droughts.
Yeah, we talked so much, Spence, about sometimes in basketball, it really does just come down to shot making. And I think if you look back at the Pacer series, the Cavs out-rebounded the Pacers. Like, there are stats that are considered the quote-unquote tough stats that we because we love to throw that around, that the Cavs won in those categories. Like, they were a better rebounding team in that series, but so much of that series was also about the guys just not knocking down shots. And what you saw with this Pacers run was they have, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 9 guys that at any time can knock down shots. Like you said, TJ McConnell last night having like a 12-point run in the third quarter, and there was a stretch where a Pacers player didn't score like a field goal for like a 10-minute stretch, and the last person to do it was TJ McConnell. Like, he could go off at any moment. You had so many guys like Nemhard and Neesmith who could knock down threes. Like, the Cavs just didn't have that. And it's about finding those other depth pieces that can contribute that. And so that's why I do think making a move is important, because I want to see them sort of find the right fit around that core, or what's left of the core after they make a move, to sort of help them get to a level where they can run with a team like the Pacers or run with a team like the Thunder. And then, so this is where things get interesting, because we know Kevin Durant, the Kevin Durant trade was the highlight of the NBA offseason drama from the weekend. Obviously, there was a game on Sunday, but before the game commenced, we got Kevin Durant getting traded from Phoenix to the Rockets. I thought it was actually a good trade for both teams in the grand scheme of things, especially if Jalen Green can sort of get back to being a scorer that they think he can be. But that's a different conversation for a different time. What I found interesting, though, was that Shams Charania, in his story for ESPN on the trade, mentioned that the Cavaliers were sort of this dark horse wild card team that was making phone calls on Kevin Durant. And why that's interesting, Spence, is because, listen, for the Cavs to make a trade for Kevin Durant happen, they would have had to give up Darius Garland. They would have had to give up Jared Allen. Like, they were going to have to combine a couple big salaries here to make that work, because KD's contract was so massive. And so that's where I find what I find interesting about this is, like, this to me signals that maybe Kobe Altman is trying to be aggressive here. And like we just had in our previous conversation, like, going to try to push those chips into the center of the table and do what needs to be done to improve this roster. Because if they were trying to take a big swing and land Kevin Durant, I mean, that would have been a massive, like, you would have changed the math on a lot of things. It would have made your window a little bit shorter, because Durant's older, obviously 36 years old. And you would have changed some of the math on those things. And I'm sure there would have been some controversial thoughts on, should they have done this? Shouldn't they have done this? Whatever. But the fact that you are at least in the mix on a trade like that tells me that Kobe is at least doing his due diligence on trying to improve this team this offseason. And so what does that mean for the future of Jared Allen, for the future of Darius Garland? Like, that's the big question that kind of awaits here. But clearly, he is, at least based off of that report, it sounds like he is not resting on his laurels based off of what that report, I think, sort of suggested.
Right, and you shouldn't. What I'm curious about is in what capacity they'd be involved in that. Because, again, you can't combine salaries. So,
oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right.
In what way would they have been involved? Was it in a deal for Durant? Was it to be, again, a facilitator? Is this something to where, if you think back to when the Cavs got Jared Allen, right, and they ended up with Karis LeVert, like that type of thing, I'm really curious to see how maybe it was a multi-team deal. Maybe they were trying to figure out a way to get somebody else from either Phoenix or from Houston. I don't know.
Yeah.
The frameworks are always guess and check.
For sure.
But it probably was something to do with, like, how they got Jared Allen, like back in 2020, that four-way deal that was ridiculous. Like that. Those are the things that I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about how were they possibly going to get, because I think the only way they could get Kevin Durant would be like, I don't know, this is true or not, so don't quote me on this, but thinking about who makes the most money on the team, like, was Donovan Mitchell for Kevin Durant straight up or something? Like would it be like that? Or would it be they would be a suitor in terms of helping get a deal done? Because they can't combine salaries again. So there's only so many ways.
That is a key piece of that. Yeah. Listen, the salary cap restrictions and being a second apron team does limit, as we've mentioned many times, what they can do. I was wrong in saying they could have combined. They would have had to combine a couple of salaries there, because you're right. That is impossible in the current setup they have, based off of where they're at as a near second apron team, or flirting with being a second apron team based on how certain things kind of go and unfold this offseason. But yeah, listen, I feel like what you're laying out here probably makes some sense, that maybe they were like a third team involved, right? Trying to help sort of Kevin Durant trade go through somewhere. And then they were going to end up with some pieces and parts based off of throwing somebody into the deal. That could have been the case. I sort of wrote off early on in the conversations about KD, Spence, that the Cavs actually had a legitimate chance to even land him because of all those things, because of the contract situations and how difficult it was going to be, because I didn't know that he would really want to come to Cleveland. Like there's a number of factors involved in that, and I didn't really bank on him coming here. And so when I saw that in the Shams report, I thought it was interesting, and obviously it's been a big topic of conversation for people that they at least were trying to maybe get involved in some capacity, but we don't know obviously what that looked like in its full scale, I guess.
And obviously the other thing too with KD, gotta understand he's getting up there in age now too.
Yeah.
And this would be a rental, right? That's the risk obviously that the Rockets are taking, and that's a good risk because he'll probably sign back there after this year. But those things are not set in stone. Like the Cavs traded for Donovan Mitchell and they banked on selling him on the culture, and he ended up signing that extension.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the Rockets are looking at. They're seeing their young core, like a guy like Amen Thompson, being that next up. Alperen Şengün, same thing. Jabari Smith Jr., who they kept, which was fantastic work by Houston's front office. But at the same time, that's still a risk. And the Suns did a good job because, again, KD's got 1 year on his deal left, and you get the number 10 pick, you get 5 second-rounders, but then you also get Jalen Green. Jalen Green's got plenty of room to develop, plenty of time to develop. He's a very young player. I don't think he's there yet. And then obviously Dylan Brooks is playoff-type defender, playoff-type player that can suit in there. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he works out with Devin Booker, considering their jabs back and forth when the Olympics was around. But I think that is also it's a risk, but I think it's a good trade for both teams. Don't get me wrong, like KD going to that team should help a ton. I'm also looking at, and it's a team sport, so I don't want to go here, but when you look at it, KD, he's been traded how many times now? How many playoff wins has that equated to as of late? And you also think about how much injury history he's started to pile up.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's the other thing too, because flashy names don't always get you. I know he's an all-timer, Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Amazing, still the best scorer bar none in the last decade. Scoring in any way, whether he's shooting threes, whether he's doing the pull-up mid-rangers, all that stuff. He is a fantastic player. So please do not take a clip out of this and make me look like I'm trying to bash KD. But he's getting older. He's getting older,
yeah.
and it's a 1 year deal for now. So it's a risk.
And then honestly, that's why those are all reasons why I was kind of out. Maybe out's not the right word, but those are all reasons why I was like, I just don't think it's going to happen. I didn't really think, when I think about this Cavs team, and yes, I understand the disappointment of a 64-win season ending the way that it did. Kevin Durant was never in my purview, Spence, as we've talked through what needs to change in terms of that's the move they need to make. I never looked and said, you know what, they need to go get Kevin Durant to put themselves over the top. That's just not where the team is at. We're talking about, as we just did, and sort of comparing them to other teams in the Eastern Conference and whatnot. It's ancillary things. It's finding the right fits around whatever you decide your core players is. If it's Donovan and Mobley, okay, what is the right fit around those two guys with shooters and rim protection and guys who can sort of do multiple things and defend play both ways. What is the right fit around those guys? Is it Garland, Mobley, and Mitchell? If it's those three, okay, what's the right fit to replace Jared Allen and get the right person to sort of supplement with Evan Mobley so he can play the center sometime? Those are the things that we're talking about. I never went into this offseason being like, you know what, because they lost the Pacers, go out and land the biggest fish possible and just change the math on everything and let's see what happens. That was never my perspective on it. And so that's why even the mention of the Cavs in this conversation was sort of surprising to me. The big thing I'm taking away is that, okay, Kobe's picking up the phone. He's getting involved in some of these conversations. And that I think should be a good thing for Cavs fans to recognize. but I never, I would have sort of been perplexed if like there would have been this initial shock value of what they got Kevin Durant, and then I think I would have been like, why was that the move they felt they needed to make? Because I don't think this team needs to make a move like that. It makes sense for the Rockets. It made sense why Orlando did what they did for Desmond Bane. I don't know that like the Cavs needed to go get like the big fish out there to make this thing happen, unless I guess it was Giannis, right? Because Giannis, I guess, would be the real big fish. He's 6 years younger than KD. I also think this sets the market on what his value is going to be if he is traded. But yeah, like I don't think that's the move the Cavs needed to make. But I think it's a good thing that at least the phone's being picked up.
I also want to talk about this in relation to those kind of marginal moves. And I think it's kind of curious. Like, why is no one talking about DeAndre Hunter? Like, DeAndre Hunter kind of is one of those on the margins moves. Somebody who probably could be elevated into a bigger role. Somebody who is
probably should be
a very tall, very long player. And he's only played with the team for a few months and kind of got thrown into the fire a little bit. What does a full training camp for him do? What does that do with Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland? That lineup that you love with Dean Wade with him.
Yeah.
Like, what does that do? Can that be unlocked in the playoffs? Because Hunter, too, let's not forget about Hunter. He was playing with 4 fingers. Like,
on a shooting
hand. Like, exactly. So is that a move that you can look at, too? Is just like, we did something at the trade deadline. Do we have to trade at every possible turn and possibility throughout the entire year? Is the trade deadline not enough? Is the summer not enough? Is in November not enough? Like, So I think that's also another thing. We're glossing over DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is somebody that's just kind of been left by the wayside, and he could absolutely be a core piece. Not like point. In terms of the same level, but like in that Max Strus ilk. And I think Hunter has still a ton of potential offensively.
It's a really good point by you, Spence, because okay, so if we're looking at like if we're saying the Cavs, like if there's like 100%, right, of like what makes the Cavs a title contender to get to 100%, like I think 20% of your improvement can come from if Evan Mobley just like takes that next step and is the offensive threat that we want him to be. I think there's like an instant like 20% increase in like their chances of winning a title. I think Hunter is, I think the Hunter conversation, I think, works into a larger picture conversation of year 2 of Kenny Atkinson, how he applies his offense, which he didn't have a ton of time last year because he was doing the Olympics. He was coaching the Olympics to like install and really work with guys, how he sees things differently going into year 2 and like kind of what his mindset is year 2 with these guys. And part of that is, okay, does DeAndre Hunter go and get inserted into the starting lineup? And so some of the changes that I think can make with the pieces he has right now, I think is maybe like a 10% increase as to this team potentially winning the title. And then I think the other like 70% comes from, all right, what moves do you make? What changes do you make to the roster? How do you sort of find the other parts and pieces that you're missing to get you over the hump? So that's that's a weird way to, I guess, to sort of explain it. But I do think that Hunter conversation is an interesting one because, him as a starter does change the math on this starting lineup and what this team kind of looks like going into next year. And that is something that we probably should talk about more at some point this offseason, but also can't be forgotten about if you're a fan of this team.
And you can play Max Strus with him at the 2. You could bring Max Strus off the bench. And then you think about the next echelon, the way that Kobe mentions that internal development and always getting guys to that next level when he was talking about Sam Merrill and Ty Jerome earning themselves some money. You look at Craig Porter Jr., you look at Jalen Tyson as guys that can get to that next step and get into this rotation. Those are the things that I'm looking at. And I know that those aren't going to be primary roles, but they're going to be very important responsibilities to have.
I want to get to some of the comments here before we sign off, and I'm right on cue. Harry LaFontaine says Jalen Tyson is going to be a rotational piece moving forward. I love that comment because I was about to just respond to you, Spence, and say I'm actually been thinking a lot more in the week that you were on vacation about. I'm excited to see Jalen Tyson's role increase next year and what that kind of looks like. I think you're right though. Like, especially you brought it up after Kobe Altman's press conference, like how much he leaned into, internal development and these young guys on the roster and new roles for guys. And so both him and Craig Porter, I think, are going to sort of be factored into that. So I like that thought process from you in that comment there.
We got a ton more.
I was going to say, Steven Walker says, you guys rock, which we appreciate. He also threw in that KD is washed and that he thinks the Suns won the trade. I don't know if I call KD washed just yet because he still is an elite scorer, but I know where the sentiments are coming from. I think KD in the conversation of like star players in the league, that if you get them, you feel like you're a title contender. I don't know that KD really. I think he's lower on the list than he used to be, I guess is my point. Like, he used to be like, go get KD. That guy is one of the best in the league. He can win you a title or make you a title contender. I think especially seeing how things kind of deteriorated in Phoenix, I don't know that people think about it in that same way anymore. But I think that's more of just like a KD thing, like how they view KD as a person, less about him as a basketball player, because I still think he's a pretty damn good basketball player, if we're being honest with ourselves. We'll throw some more up here. We got 2 more to get to. 64 wins. How much improvement do they need? Conditioning and staying healthy. You see what happened to the Guardians. They shook them up and screwed the team. What does he mean by that, though?
Cross-sport comparison.
What does he mean by that, though?
They ended up trading Andres Jimenez and Josh Naylor.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, but that also
but hey.
I will say, though, the difference there is that the Guardians always trade guys when they're in like their last year of arbitration because they know they're not going to pay them, and they're like, well, we might as well get something for them now. So whether or not you thought they should shake up the team or not, it was inevitable with that team. The Cavs don't just trade guys just to trade guys because they can't pay them. That is not a problem for this team. So
Dan Gilbert foots the bell, everybody. I'll tell you that. He foots the bell.
Honestly, you mentioned being on 92.3. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago on 92.3 about Dan Gilbert should buy the Guardians. Just saying, you want a team, you want a guy that's going to invest in the team, Dan Gilbert's your man. He's done it with the Cavs.
Own the city. Own the city, Big Dan.
Just buy all the teams, yeah. And then we'll end with this one. Uriah asks, will you guys be going to Vegas for Cavs Summer League? I know, Spence, you are going. And that's good news for us in our podcast, which hopefully we'll get a chance to do some shows while you're out there and get some pods up about just what you're kind of seeing, what you're taking in. So I'm looking forward to that. I unfortunately couldn't swing it this year. So I'm very bummed about that because a week in, or at least, a few days in Vegas with Spence sounded like a dream come true. But unfortunately, I couldn't make it happen this year. So maybe down the line, we'll make sure that we can get that rolling. But I really am upset because I've never been to Summer League, and I really want to go, but it just wasn't in the cards for me this year, unfortunately. So, but you'll represent us well, Spence. I know you'll represent us well.
Always do.
Or you try to at least. All right, That's going to do it for our latest episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI. As always, we appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out with us, especially during the offseason. We thought it was important to get an episode up, especially on the day after the NBA Finals came to a close, with so many different things to talk about. We got the NBA draft already on the horizon, so we'll see what happens with that. And then, free agency is really only a week away, the start of free agency. So
welcome to player option and team option time.
That's right. That's
right. That's what this week is, and then you get to the new league year right after the draft, and then it all starts again.
Things are going to be hot and heavy for sure over the course of this next week or so, as there's rumors and reports, and maybe the Cavs do make a deal. So stay tuned with us, both over at the website, si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. We have a bunch of written content up there for you, but also at the YouTube channel here for the Cavaliers on SI and this podcast specifically. I really hope we have time to get a second episode up this week, Spence. I know we talked about getting some guests on and talking about the salary cap and where the Cavs are at. So we'll see if we can get that rolling for you. But I promise you, Spence was on vacation last week. I'll be on vacation starting middle of next week. So there'll be a few little lulls here, but I promise you the content will continue this summer, and we'll keep on talking about your favorite basketball team all summer long and count you down to the start of next regular season, which weirdly enough will be here before we know it, Spence, because that's how the sports calendar seems to work. But thanks again for stopping.
Let's enjoy the weather first.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's enjoy a couple weeks of the nice weather. I'm going to enjoy my vacation, and then we can start thinking about the season actually tipping off again. But appreciate you guys as always. Keep on following along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers on SI.